What's up, everybody? My name is Jack Daly, and welcome to Mythic Existence, a channel where we explore folklore and myths from around the globe. Today's episode is a very special first edition of my new series on mythological figures, and we are going to start out by covering one of Greek mythology's most interesting characters, Hecate. Some of you may know Hecate as being the lunar goddess of witchcraft, ghosts, and necromancy, and from her role in the famous myth of Persephone's abduction from Hades. She's recognizable by depictions of her being clothed in a long robe, carrying burning torches, and by her triple form. The goddess is often accompanied by barking dogs, and pillars of her were erected at crossroads in the ancient world to ward off evil spirits. But as we'll see, her role in the Greek pantheon is much more complex than this. Many of the Greek gods got their place in the divine hierarchy based on the events following the Titanomachy, and Hecate is no exception. To quickly recap, toward the beginning of Greek creation, Uranus, the god of heaven, was the lord of the universe beside his wife Gaia, the goddess of the earth. He enraged his wife by locking away his children, the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires, in Tartarus, a deep prison in earth. With the help of her son Cronus, Gaia had a giant scythe made to castrate Uranus, thereby ending his rule and placing Cronus as the lord of this world. From the blood of Uranus, several races of beings were born, including the Gigantes, which is important to note because Hecate had a role to play in a war waged with them. Unfortunately, Cronus inherited some of the sins of his father, who had prophesied that one of his sons would overthrow him. Paranoid, Cronus took to ingesting his children, but his wife Rhea, like Gaia, was cunning and kept their baby Zeus hidden in a cave, waiting to dispose of the tyrant. Zeus went to his father, unaware of his identity, and fed him a poisoned drink that caused Cronus to vomit out all of his children, Zeus's siblings, whom he convinced to go to war against their father, beginning what is known as the Titanomachy. He also freed the Cyclopes and the Hecatonchires from Tartarus. Between the birth of Uranus and the Titanomachy, many generations were born. The offspring of Uranus were called the Titans, hence the term Titanomachy. Among them was the Titan Hyperion, god of heavenly light. Hyperion sired Helios, god of the sun, who himself had two sons, Perses and Aeetes. Perses became a king known for his destructive powers. Together with the Titan Asteria, the goddess of falling stars, divination, and astrology, Perses fathered Hecate, the great-great-granddaughter of Uranus. So that takes us to our point. Hecate was a Titan by birth and descended from the original Lord of the Universe. However, she was one of the few Titans that sided with Zeus during the war with Cronus. After Zeus's defeat of Cronus and ascension as the highest god, we are told by Hesiod in the Theogony that Zeus honored Hecate above all. He gave her splendid gifts and a share of the earth and the unfruitful sea. She received honor also in starry heaven and is honored exceedingly by the deathless gods. While our most reliable source, Hesiod, names Perses and Asteria as the parents of Hecate, we also read elsewhere that she is the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, of Zeus and Hera, or of Leto and Tartarus. This is not uncommon for Greek deities, who are often amalgamations of multiple gods and goddesses with complex histories as local divinities. In the case of Hecate, it has been suggested that she was originally a Thracian goddess, responsible for granting good fortune to sailors and hunters, giving wealth to the youth, and looking after cattle. These associations suggested a connection to Demeter, the nature goddess, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, Persephone and her connection to the moon, as well as the Kabiri and the Kirites, known for ruling over the mystic arts. Hecate is perhaps best known for her role in the myth of Persephone, which is one of the most famous Greek myths. The Homeric hymn to Demeter tells us this story. One day, Persephone, daughter of Demeter, was walking amongst a field of flowers when she was spotted by the lord of the underworld, Hades. Filled with lust, Hades abducted her and took her to his underground realm. Only one divinity heard the screams of Persephone as she was being dragged to the earth's depths, Hecate, goddess of witchcraft. They traveled to Hades' world, but by this time, Persephone had been tricked into eating Hades' pomegranate and was trapped. But Demeter and Hades struck a deal. Hades would allow her to live above ground with Demeter for half the year, but for the other half, she must live with him. Demeter accepted, and from that day, Hecate became the companion of Persephone. Scholars have pointed to this myth as an explanation for the cycle of the seasons, and an allegory for spring and winter. Hecate's role as a mystery lunar goddess points to the ineffable passing of the year and its tie to the cycle of the moon. A common trope we see with witches is that they are accompanied by familiars, supernatural pets who help them in their bidding, who are often thought to be other witches transformed into the animal forms. And with Hecate, the ultimate witch, we see that in myths she is the master of a black she-dog and a polecat who operate as her familiars. The Greek historian Aelian tells us that there was once a witch named Gale who was afflicted with abnormal sexual desires. For reasons that remain unclear, Hecate transformed this witch into a cat to be with her in her witching hours. A second, more developed story tells of how Queen Hecuba was turned into a black shuck to serve Hecate. Hecuba was given to Odysseus as a captive after the Trojan War. At this point, she either murdered a Thracian king during the voyage or thrust herself into a sea. She turns into a black dog after these events, either by the gods or by other mysterious forces of nature that Hecate presides over. These are not the only witches or the only aquatic transformations that Hecate is known for. In Greek myth, there are two other main witches besides Hecate: Circe, who drugs Odysseus and his men, keeping them captive on her island, and Medea, who helps Jason and the Argonauts retrieve the Golden Fleece from her father, King Aeetes. It should not come as a surprise, then, that some sources say that Hecate was the mother of both of these sorceresses. Diodorus Siculus tells us that Hecate gave birth to them after marrying King Aeetes. However, there is some disagreement here. Hesiod states in his Theogony that Helios and Perseus gave birth to Circe and King Aeetes, and that Medea was Aeetes' daughter by way of the Oceanid Idia. Still, in this case, Circe would be Hecate's aunt, as Hesiod also says that Helios and Perseus had 4 children: Circe, Pasiphae, Aeetes, and Perses, the latter of which is Hecate's canonical father. It is also unsurprising that Hecate, mysterious as she is, gave birth to a monstrous creature. According to Apollonius Rhodius' Argonautica, Hecate is the mother of Scylla, a terrible monster who lives opposite Charybdis, the whirlpool that Odysseus must pass between. She conceived of this creature by eloping with the sea god Phocis. However, many other parents have been cited as giving birth to Scylla, so this is another case of blurred identity that is so common in Greek myth. That concludes the myths of Hecate, who I feel is one of the most mysterious gods in the Greek pantheon. Let me know in the comments where you think she stacks up against the other gods and goddesses. Be sure to check in next week when we cover the origins of Sauron in celebration of the new Rings of Power series. I'm Jack Daly, and this has been Mythic Existence, and as always, keep it mythic.